My boss tried to force me to work overtime without any pay, hinting that I didn't have a choice. He was sure I would stay quiet and go along with it, but later he deeply regretted it. I found a way to show him that he couldn't treat me like that. I knew I was in trouble when Tyler leaned across the prep counter and whispered, "Watch yourself." It sounded like a bad line from a thriller, except there were no conspiracies. Just a dishwasher, greasy pans, and the lingering stench of burnt onions. Until that day, I stupidly believed that kitchens could be peaceful. Foolish. When I started working at the hotel restaurant, I was 23. I was still doing evening classes and clinging to whatever job I could get. First, it was food delivery, then stocking shelves at a warehouse, and eventually, dishwashing. Not glamorous, but the shifts were steady, and I figured no one would care enough to notice me. That was the appeal. I wanted to be invisible. I only agreed to full-time because of the insurance. Without it, I couldn't afford to see a dentist, let alone handle a medical bill. And there was something else. The dream of buying my grandma's old house out in the country. It was falling apart, but it had a porch and a garden. I held on to that image like it could pull me through. The house was hope. At first, things were bearable. The job was messy, loud, exhausting, but manageable. The dish crew rotated daily between different kitchens: Italian, grill, buffet. You never got stuck in one place, and that saved me. No time to get attached, no time to get worn down by people. I even made friends, Selena and Andrea. We joked that we were the 3As because of our names. We were tight. Then everything shifted. Management dissolved the dishwashing team, said we'd now report directly to the kitchen chefs. They locked me into the steakhouse and the rotations ended. That alone made things heavier. Physically, sure, but the mental weight was worse. I felt stuck, like my legs had turned to concrete. That's when Tyler showed up, the new assistant chef. She was in her early 30s, with hair always in a perfect bun, and a face that seemed frozen in a permanent "I'm disappointed" expression. At first, she barely spoke, just watched. I figured, great. Quiet people don't start drama. The first incident was stupid. I went to fill my water bottle in the break room. It was hot. The sinks were backing up, steam everywhere. My hair was sticking to my forehead. I grabbed the handle and she materialized out of nowhere. "Why aren't you using the server's water station?" I blinked. They told us to only use the one in the break room. "Don't lie. I see servers filling theirs out here every day. You're just wasting time. Keep it up and I'll write you up." I froze. It was a flat-out lie. And why did she care? Before I could answer, the head chef walked by and asked what was going on. I stayed quiet. Tyler smoothly gave her version, confident as ever. But as he turned to leave, a manager stepped out from the back and muttered, "Guess I'll have to talk to the servers again." Then looked at me. "Go ahead and fill your water." I thought, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she didn't know the rule. But then, things started to add up. From that day on, Tyler made sure I was always alone. She'd pull Selena and Andrea to do quick tasks, like peeling potatoes or wiping down tables, leaving me drowning in pans soaked in beef fat. Then she'd come back and smirk. "Falling behind already? Need to pick up the pace?" I tried. God, I tried. But I'd get home and crash in my clothes, too tired to eat. I didn't dare complain. With the new policy, once someone left, they weren't replaced. Losing my spot meant losing insurance, doctors, meds, all of it. Gone. So I stayed quiet. Until the games got worse. But back then, I still didn't realize I'd become her target. Summer hit like a freight train. Anyone who's ever worked in a commercial kitchen during July knows it's not just heat. It's grease in the air. It's that smell of overcooked fish and melting plastic wrap. The dish pit turned into a swamp. I could feel my socks squish halfway through every shift. My apron stuck to me like wet cardboard. That day, I'd been elbow deep in a sink full of fish trays, scrubbing baked-on garlic crust off the corners. It was over 90 degrees outside, and at least 10 degrees worse inside. I was counting tilapia fillets while trying not to gag on the smell when I heard it. "Hey, I need you in the office." Tyler. It was weird. No one got called to the office unless they were getting a 10-cent raise or being reprimanded. My performance review wasn't due until January. I wiped my hands, still reeking of lemon degreaser, and followed her. She gestured for me to go in first. The door closed behind me. What I wasn't expecting was another woman already sitting at the table. Older, serious, in a crisp button-down. She glanced up, confused. Clearly wasn't expecting me either. Then Tyler spoke. "It's the smell. From her. It's noticeable." I froze. Tyler turned red. The woman's brows shot up. Tyler stammered. "I've had complaints about her body odor. It hit me then. This was a setup, and not even a smart one. I'd been in that pit for hours, cleaning fish and burning my arms on greasy pans. Of course, I didn't smell like a candle shop. But complaints? Lies. The woman looked me up and down and asked, calm but firm, "May I check?" "I don't notice anything." I said, "Sure." She stepped closer, leaned in slightly, and sniffed the air. Once. Twice. "I don't smell anything unusual," she said. "Do you have any idea where these complaints came from?" I cleared my throat. "I work with chemical degreasers, hot trays, and fryer baskets. My apron's soaked. If there's a smell, it's the job." I pointed to the apron, streaked with oil, damp from steam, fish scales clinging to the hem. She nodded. "We'll look into replacing these aprons. Thank you. Take your break. Tyler, stay here." I stepped out, my hands trembling, not with shame, but with rage. She tried to humiliate me, in front of a manager, using my job against me. I wasn't even surprised, not really, but something had shifted. From that point forward, I was no longer allowed to speak with Tyler unless another employee was present. If no one was nearby, I was told to find a supervisor to mediate. It sounded like a win, but it wasn't. She got smarter, pettier. She started watching me constantly. If I leaned on a counter for 5 seconds, she'd shout from across the room, "Back to work." And then, 2 minutes later, I'd hear her laughing in the corner with one of the line cooks, flirting like she hadn't just scolded me like a toddler. It wasn't about rules. It wasn't about hygiene. It was about power. And the more I realized it, the more I saw the pattern. Tyler didn't bother people who flattered her. She didn't snap at guys who complimented her food. But women who kept their heads down, who worked hard and stayed quiet, we were competition. And I wasn't playing her game. Selena and Andrea started getting pulled more and more into side tasks, always at the busiest moments. Tyler's excuse was team flexibility. The truth? She didn't want us working together. When we were together, we laughed. We helped each other. That made us harder to isolate. Meanwhile, I stopped making eye contact with her altogether. I spoke only when necessary. I moved like a shadow between sinks, trays, and steamers, trying to become invisible again. But invisibility didn't work anymore. She'd already marked me. It was the coldest night of the year when I almost broke. The kind of cold that makes your steering wheel feel like a block of ice. The kind where your breath turns solid the moment it hits the air. I remember trying to unlock my car after my shift, and the key snapped clean in the lock, just broke in half. I stood there holding the metal stub in my gloved hand and laughed like I'd finally lost it. I left the engine running to thaw the car and trudged back through the lot, intending to grab my book from my locker and sit in the break room for a few minutes before heading home. That book was the only thing I looked forward to lately. 5 pages of peace before going back to the studio apartment I could barely afford. 1 cat, 1 floor lamp. No heating. Bliss. I'd barely made it past the first paragraph when the door creaked open behind me. I didn't even look up. I didn't have to. Tyler. She stepped inside, glanced around, spotted me, and smiled with that tight, nasty smirk I'd grown to hate more than the scent of bleach. "You're not dismissed," she said. "Who said you could finish your shift?" I blinked. She folded her arms. "Dish machine's filthy. Night shift says it's disgusting. Either you go clean it now or don't bother clocking in again. Your choice." Then she turned and walked out, laughing. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the book in my hands like it had answers. My heart raced, my throat closed. The cold from outside somehow slipped under my skin, even though I was indoors. I felt small, trapped. This wasn't a warning, it was a threat. And she meant it. In any other job, I would have told her to get lost. But this job came with just enough strings to hold me hostage. Full-time status, medical insurance. The only thing between me and complete collapse. I had dropped out of college 6 months earlier to keep up with rent. I was behind on bills. I'd already given away one of my cats because I couldn't afford food for both. I couldn't lose this job. Not yet. But then something in me shifted. She wanted me to clean the machine without clocking in? Fine. I stood, grabbed my gloves, and walked straight through the corridor like I was marching into a war I didn't plan to win. A security guard called out something behind me. I ignored him. The kitchen smelled like burnt meat and metal. The night crew froze as I walked in. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked. "Tyler said the machine's filthy," I replied. "Said you guys complained, told me to clean it or get fired." They exchanged confused looks. Then one of them said, "That's not true." It was spotless when we came in. We didn't say a word to her. My stomach dropped. I looked at the sink, the racks, the machine. Everything gleamed, cleaner than usual. One of the night leads stepped out to find a supervisor while the others started debating whether Tyler even had the authority to fire me. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, half numb from adrenaline and cold, while my hands hovered over dishes that didn't need washing. By the time the supervisor arrived, my arms were wet, my gloves soaked, my eyes dry but burning. She listened to what happened, then quietly told me Tyler had already clocked out an hour ago, that she hadn't spoken to any of them, that she had no right to threaten me. At all. I asked how to submit a resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice. She looked startled. Why are you still doing this then? I didn't know how to answer. Maybe I wanted closure. Or maybe I just needed one last paycheck. I went home that night at 3:12 a.m., fell into bed in my work clothes, and didn't even take off my shoes. But I slept with a strange, bitter peace in my chest. I was done letting her win quietly. I woke up still dressed. My boots were on. My apron was on the floor, soaked in grease and humiliation. It was 10:42 a.m. My shift started in less than an hour. I couldn't even remember how I got home. I think I left my car unlocked with the trunk open. I didn't care. Inside, nothing. No anger, no tears, just silence. The kind that rings in your ears. I went to work. Not because I had to, because I didn't know what else to do. Survival mode. Autopilot. I scrubbed trays like they weren't real. Reality moved around me like background scenery. There, but untouched. Tyler wasn't there that day. Someone said she had come in for the morning and left early. Someone else joked she probably had a date. I didn't laugh. Not with my face, not with my eyes. I just kept working. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. One of the cooks, Tommy, left a small lunchbox next to the sink. He didn't say anything, just placed it and walked off. I opened it. There was a sandwich and an apple. A napkin. No note. I didn't ask. Later, Andrea, one of the girls I used to rotate with, stopped beside me while I was scrubbing a greasy pan and said, "If you ever need cover, just let me know." I nodded. No one said anything else. But I knew they'd seen it. Maybe not everything, but enough to understand what was happening. A couple days later, I went to HR, sat down, told the whole story. The threat, the unregistered shift, the pressure. The HR woman listened like I was reading out a soup recipe. Then she shrugged. "So, what do you want us to do about it?" That was it. No shock, no concern, no protocol. Just polite exhaustion. I walked out and stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at a wall. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. Later, I tried talking to the kitchen supervisor. I used to respect him. He'd always seemed fair. I hoped, stupidly, that maybe he'd understand. He looked at me, silent for a while, then said, "There will always be people like her. You need to toughen up, grow thicker skin." I realized I was on my own. Then came the next blow. I noticed money missing from my bank account. At first, I thought it was some kind of fee. Then I saw the transaction history. Nearly everything was gone. Not a credit card. My payroll account. I called the bank. They transferred me to the fraud department. Silence. A week later, I got an email. "No violations found during internal review." What? Someone drained my account and there's no one to blame? I reached out to the company lawyer. An employee benefit for full-time staff. But even he stalled. Missing paperwork. Internal process. "We'll be in touch." I had $28 left for food. 0 for gas. I started collecting cans from the break room. There was a bag everyone tossed recyclables into. I'd go through it late at night when no one could see. I felt like a thief. Like I was stealing, even though I was the one being robbed. Sometimes the steakhouse manager would pass me food marked for disposal. Leftovers. I took it. Ate behind stacks of sauce boxes in storage. And still I kept coming to work. Because I still believed this was temporary. That if I held on just a little longer, I could escape. Or someone would help. Or maybe I'd grow strong enough to fight back. Like in movies. But this wasn't a movie. There were no heroes. And I wasn't some savior. I just didn't want to give up. Even if I was already drowning. On Friday, I came into my shift with a folded note in my pocket. It was handwritten on a scrap from my notebook. I request to resign from my position with 2 weeks' notice. No emotions. No explanations. Just a period. I'd been carrying it for 3 days. Clutched it in my fist when things got too much. Sometimes I'd pull it out in the break room, lay it on the table in front of me, just stare at it. Then fold it back and tuck it away. Not because I didn't know what I wanted. I did. I wanted to disappear. But fear had me in a chokehold. Losing this job meant losing everything that barely held me together. Insurance. My pathetic but steady paycheck. The full-time status that got me access to the company lawyer, to medication discounts, to any kind of security. Leaving meant admitting that all of it had been an illusion. But something snapped that day. We were cleaning glass pans left over from a banquet. They were heavy, slick, sharp-edged. My hands were shaking from fatigue when Tyler walked over with a tray of greasy pots and dropped it straight into the sink. Water splashed into my face. One of the trays slammed against my wrist. She didn't apologize, just glanced at me like I was furniture. "You're behind again." I didn't say a word. I walked to the back room, pulled out the note, and placed it in the employee documents box. Slowly. No drama. No noise. The next day, I was called into the office. Night supervisor, steakhouse manager, a couple of senior chefs were there. Tyler too, but she wasn't her usual self. Shoulders slumped, pale, eyes down. Turns out the night crew had filed a report after the dishwashing incident, plus camera footage, plus the security guard who confirmed I entered the kitchen off the clock and looked disturbingly quiet. They let me speak. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "I'm leaving. I need to breathe." The steakhouse manager looked at me for a long second, then said, "What if I asked you to stay?" "On one condition. Tyler never contacts you again. Any issues go through the head chef, only with a witness." I didn't know how to answer. It sounded like relief and a trap. I asked for time to think. Later in the hallway, Andrea caught up with me. She said, "You look alive for the first time, you know that?" And that decided it. I went back and said, "Fine, I'll stay, but only if every word of that promise is honored. If not, I walk out. No notice." They agreed. Tyler didn't even look at me. She just stood and left. Inside, I didn't feel triumphant. This wasn't a victory. It was quiet. Like someone had finally turned off a siren I'd gotten so used to, I'd stopped hearing it. From that day on, I worked in silence. No small talk. No effort to be liked. No smiling. But I felt lighter. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being fired. The first week without Tyler felt like someone had turned off the static in my head. Not silence. Just the absence of tension. Like a constant background buzz I'd grown used to had finally stopped, and I could breathe. I came in, tied my apron, turned on the machine, and just worked. No one breathing down my neck. No one watching my every move. No one inventing reasons to tear me down. My coworkers started smiling more. Not deliberately, just naturally. Even the air in the kitchen felt lighter. Tyler still worked there, but under the terms that had been set, she wasn't allowed to come near me. All communication had to go through the head chef, and only in the presence of a witness. I'd been afraid she'd try to push the limits, but she vanished. Not physically, just energetically. Like someone had cut her out of the room. I'd see her occasionally, standing in the corner of the kitchen, talking to someone, but no one seemed to really listen. People used to gravitate toward her. Now they avoided her. Once I caught her turning around, scanning the room. Our eyes met for just a second. No anger, no regret, just emptiness. I looked away. A couple weeks later, I took my first day off. No guilt, no dread, just exhaled. I drove to my parents' house. My mom asked how I was doing, and I said, "Fine." It wasn't a lie. It was the only word that didn't need unpacking. My dad poured tea and placed some of the cookies I used to love as a kid in front of me. I sat on the porch and realized this was real life. Not the kitchen, not the banging trays, not the tension. This. But peace never lasts. When I came back, I noticed a new girl in the locker room. Young, barely out of school. She kept her arms folded, head down, like she was bracing for impact. 2 days later, I heard it. "Running behind again, sweetheart?" That voice. That tone. Tyler. She had moved on. New target. Same routine. Fake corrections. Public nitpicking, that sweet sour tone. And something in me boiled over. I watched for a couple of days, then found the new girl alone in the break room and said, "You don't have to take it. If anything happens, come to me. Don't wait for it to get worse." She nodded, quiet, with a look that said this might have been the first time someone had offered her that. Not pity, not rescue, just presence. It was the first time I'd broken the silence. Not for me, for someone else. And I realized if I wanted to be truly free, I had to be honest too. Even in small doses. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't hunching my shoulders and shrinking to fit. I had started saying no, and for once, it wasn't to myself. Tyler didn't yell, didn't make a scene, didn't try to defend herself. She just disappeared. A few days before that, I saw the new girl talking to the manager. Quietly, no drama. Andrea stood nearby. I understood, and I wasn't surprised. The next day, someone in the locker room whispered, "Tyler's leaving." voluntarily. I nodded. Didn't ask why. Later, I overheard a senior server on the phone. About time. She should have been gone months ago. Her voice was flat, like talking about trash that had finally been taken out. On Tyler's last day, I came in like always, took my place at the sink, tied my apron, turned on the machine. Everything felt normal, but the air was different. I expected her to say something. One last jab, a final glare. Nothing happened. She wasn't even there. Later, while I was wiping down the counter, Tommy, the same cook who once left me lunch, walked by and placed a box at the edge of the table. Cookies? Homemade, no reason. I smiled. Barely. He winked, kept walking. After the shift, someone popped a soda. Someone else brought cake. Someone said, "Feels easier to breathe now." No one mentioned her name. I sat in the corner and listened. People talked, laughed, sat in silence, comfortably, not tensely. The whole room felt exhaled. I thought I'd feel something bigger. Triumph, relief, closure. But all I felt was peace, no joy. No pain, just peace. I stayed. A week later, the manager pulled me aside. He said he was getting promoted. Asked if I'd be interested in stepping up. Lead steward in charge of the shift. I thanked him and said no, not out of spite or principle. Just because I didn't need it anymore. I had already proved what I needed to prove. The real turning point had come earlier, when I dropped that letter in the box. When I stepped out of the victim role, a promotion wouldn't change anything. I worked. Quietly. Consistently. Sometimes even with a little enjoyment. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living.